Mommy, I hope it's a wee girl, because you can dress wee girls so much nicer. In those days, that was it. Remember, those of you of a certain age, the little girls with the little frilly dresses with the wee panties to match, but boys were plain romper suits. It's all changed now. And she thought, I would love a wee sister, and I'll dress her, and so on. And then she said one day, because in her little innocent mind, she just didn't connect a baby coming with me being in bed. So she thought, Mommy's just, she couldn't remember Mommy not being sick. Because 9 months is a long time for a child of that age. And she almost had forgotten what it was like for me to be going about doing ordinary things. And she said, Mommy, don't worry. When you're not well, when the wee baby comes, I will be a second mother to that baby. I will take her for walks, and I will feed it and change it, and over all the different things that she and her little mind wanted to do. And you know, neither she nor I had any idea of what she was promising that day. But you know, she more than kept that promise, way, way beyond the call of duty. But the time came at last when Lisa was born, and I can remember them saying in the labour ward, it's a girl. And I remember thinking, well, for Diane's sake, I'm just so pleased, because she'll just be so thrilled. I didn't mind, but for her, I remember thinking that's a lovely bonus. And thinking that all the months of weakness was over, the pain was gone, the labour was over, and I just felt almost euphoric. And you mums will appreciate the feeling. And thinking that I'm so far up there that nothing will bring me down to earth. And they wheeled me out of the labour ward, and I can remember one of the doctors, I got to know him after that, didn't know that he was a born-again Christian. And I remember him saying, as I walked along, he said, you look very happy. And in one way I thought that's a silly thing to say, because you're a lot happier on the way out than you are on the way in. In any sense, anyway. But I said yes. He said, you're especially happy. And of course, he had seen a lot of mums being wheeled out as well as him. And he said, you're especially happy. So I said, yes, I am. And I started to tell him that how that 2 years before that, in that same hospital, that I was told I'd never take care of my home and the children that I had without help ever again that I had had. They said the muscles of my heart were so badly damaged, and there was a permanent damage. And I said, you know, God came and healed me. And I said, I just feel today that now I've given birth to another child. And I remember looking up as he was walking alongside, and my eyes were upward. And I remember saying, you know, doctor, I just feel so specially blessed by God. And that's how I felt. I felt words could not possibly describe the sense of euphoria and joy that I felt. And I was wheeled out into the ward, and there was 4 beds on this side, there was an open type of unit, and 4 beds on the other side across the corridor. And I remember them shouting, what did you have? You know, mums, what happens when you come back out and all the rest. And I shouted, a wee girl, and there was rejoicing and whatever. And I wasn't long back until the sister and the senior gynecologist came and pulled the screens, and they had the baby in their arms, or the sister had, and the consultant said to me, you know, there's something we feel you ought to know about right away. And just as he was saying that, the sister was unwinding the little blanket that was around the wee one, the baby. And they didn't have to say anything more, because when I looked, what I saw was not this little bouncing baby that Diane was looking forward to, but just all I could describe was a little deformed, twisted scrap of humanity. And I can remember just doing that. I couldn't bear to look. And I remember the consultant saying, you know, we're so sorry. We are just so sorry. And they said, well, we just, and he turned to the sister, he says, let's leave her alone just for a little while. And that's exactly how I felt. There's something about pain and sorrow, whatever, and trauma and crisis that gives a feeling of isolation and almost desolation. wasn't God.